Hey everyone, so for the next fleet formation we'll be looking at today, it's the one that has been commonly called by the community as AmAKaga, but I honestly prefer to call it SpeedRunners. Now, SpeedRunners focuses on the Sakura Empire side with their many skills. So let's talk about this fleet formation and see what makes it what it is. As usual, I do want to get the point across that the fleets that are covered in this series are not necessarily meta-based fleets, and may be extremely gimmicky. These fleets can be based on a playstyle that may or may not be to your liking. At the end of the day, whether or not you use these fleets is entirely up to you and you alone. However, this video series will serve as a way to introduce players to twists that they can use to give themselves a good change of pace, or something to just have some fun with. Now with that out of the way, let's dive in. Unlike our last formation, SpeedRunners relies on a strong backline of a particular setup. There are no real substitutes for this backline due to the unique nature of the characters involved. Well, okay, technically you can use other alternatives, but they lack the benefits from the original character that they are fulfilling. However, for now, let's look at the core three ships involved: Akagi, Amagi, and Kaga. This formation focuses on one particular aspect that these three ship girls can provide: a fast attacking backline. To understand what I mean by this, let's take a look at their skills. While I may have already covered Amagi in great detail in her own video, we'll still go over her skills here. All three of her skills are heavily involved here, but the most important one is her red skill, Crippling Strike. When firing her main gun, she has up to a 70% chance to let off a strong barrage, the damage of which is based on its level. The damage output is pretty solid and can help in a pinch. However, the main aspect of the skill that we're going to be working with is that if the fleet has 4 or more Sakura Empire ships, the first salvo's cooldown is reduced by up to 45%. This cooldown is pretty massive and will allow her to attack a lot faster than most battleships and battlecruisers do. I believe my setup seems to hit around the 11 to 12 second mark, which is still pretty dang good. Amagi has 2 additional skills that both help out the fleet as a whole, but are not the main reasons behind this fleet formation. Amagi's blue skill, Efficacious Planning, will help to protect the backline from burn damage while also giving them better dodging by buffing their evasion rate. Now for those that don't know, evasion has 2 parts. There's the evasion stat itself and evasion rate. The stat calculates the chance to dodge based on a formula, while evasion rate gives a flat percentage chance to avoid the attacks that is added at the end of the calculation. The increase to evasion rate gives an even better chance to dodge the overall attack. The reduced burn damage will help in late game maps where HE can cause a lot of burn damage, and that can be a bit of a problem. Now, Amagi's yellow skill, Ageless Phoenix, works as a passive debuff as long as Amagi is standing. The debuff lowers the overall damage output of enemies by reducing their firepower, torpedo, and aviation. Less damage done is gonna give better overall survival. So in the end, Amagi contributes not only to this formation's gimmick, but also to the fleet as a whole. One of the last things I do want to mention before we move on is that Amagi should be flagship of this backline. The frontal barrage is kind of critical for that. Now, Akagi and Kaga, much like other carry divisions, share at least one skill with each other. Both of them have Preemptive Strike, which reduces their overall cooldowns of their first attack by up to 50%. While the times may vary depending on the equipment, both of them, for me at least, are attacking around the 15-second mark. This is also the skill that was the direct counter to Enterprise in the early days of PvP. Nonetheless, the fast attacking can provide benefits regardless of who they are fighting. Anyway, onto their second skill, First Carry Division, or Ikosen. This skill gives a nice buff of up to 35% of their aviation stat when both of them are sorted together. Now it does allow you to use their counterparts like Kaga BB or Akagi Muse or Akagi-chan, but we will be working with the original 2 for this part, especially since the alternatives don't get the same quick attack bit. As you can see, the name SpeedRunners comes from the fact that the backline can engage with the enemy very quickly. With this setup, the entire backline is capable of attacking within the first 15 seconds of battle. This is pretty huge and can be of good use for those looking to end fights quickly. Now, of course, equipment can cause this particular result to vary, so it's good to make note of what you are particularly using on every ship. Thankfully, carriers are relatively easy to work with, as their best in slot planes can be used here with no concerns. The only major thing I would recommend on Amagi is the twin 381mm advanced main gun, or commonly known as the hood gun. It's a pretty solid main gun for her and won't be of any major consequence to use. Oh, And if you're one of the peeps that's been around since the start, definitely look into slapping the high standard fire control radar as an auxiliary on her. It will reduce her main attack by about 3-4 seconds, bringing it down to a nice 8 seconds total. It's kind of ridiculous. I mean, have you ever seen a cooldown look like this? It's pretty satisfying. Now, Vanguard wise, this part is entirely up to you. Make sure you remember that you will need at least one of them to be from the Sakura Empire in order for Amagi to get her skill to proc for the cooldown. Outside of that, you can choose whoever you would like to have in your Vanguard. If you're looking for some good suggestions for the Sakura Empire, then I can recommend these particular characters. If you're looking for a good heavy cruiser, look no further than Mogami Retrofit. For the most part, her skills help her churn out some solid damage in both gun and torpedo. But she also has a good bit of survivability against AP rounds, which benefits her as she's a medium armor and can definitely help when fighting battleships using AP guns. Sorry, War Corgi, you may not be able to one-shot her with this particular skill.
Are you sure about that?
Now, if you don't have Mogami, that's perfectly fine. There are good other replacements for this. Takao can be a good replacement for Mogami if you happen to have her, or if you want to go for a more cheaper option, you can always work with Furutaka or Kako. Now, if you're wanting to rely on other factions for DPS, like the Eagle Union, then you can rely on the one and only Yukikaze to keep herself alive. Her skills can allow her to stay alive while also providing a good heal to your backline in case things get pretty nasty, especially since you are lacking a solid healer in your fleet. Lastly, if you're looking for a good cruiser to help with the one weakness of the Sakura Empire known as anti-air, you can rely on Isuzu Retrofit to meet that demand. Or, well, alright, fine, I guess you could technically argue that San Diego can work as well. Just remember that you're going to need to have one Sakura Empire ship in your Vanguard somehow. Now, of course, you could also go completely torpedo fleet fanatic with the many ships that they can provide for that particular scenario, but just remember, those particular ships generally don't tend to have a lot of health, and you've got no healer. Now, one of the major downsides to this fleet is its availability. Amagi is still event limited, and if you weren't around during the Crimson Echoes rerun, or RNG just really didn't like you, then you'd be missing the centerpiece to this fleet. Granted, there are some alternatives, but they won't give the same benefits as Amagi. King George V is an alternative that can work as she can provide a fast-firing attack with the quad 356mm main gun. If combined with the high standard fire control radar, it takes around 5 seconds for her to charge her first salvo. Yeah, 5 seconds. She is locked behind a Scherzo of Iron and Blood, which looks like it may be actually coming soon. There's also Jumbart and Dunkirk who can both immediately fire their main gun at the start of the fight, because that's fair and balanced. Now, Akagi and Kaga don't have any major replacements. Granted, now I would say that they're obtainable in the base game, but it's 3-4. Yeah, that map. Oh boy. If you don't have them yet, I wish you the best of luck. Now, the next question is how this fleet functions, and honestly, it's not a bad fleet comp. The sheer damage output these 3 ships can put out is really worth noting. In a lot of cases, they really will put an end to a fight real quick. One particular area that can be noticeably effective in is fights against event elite fleets. Even with higher level elite fights, the backline can take them down relatively ease due to their fast attacking gimmick that they work with. Boss fleets will see the least effectiveness with this setup as bosses do not spawn immediately. This will force the player to either use Amagi's attack early, or hold it for the duration of the mob portion of the fight. And you actually may be able to get 2 sets of planes from both Akagi and Kaga setup. Now, farming wise, this fleet probably won't be ideal. The biggest complaint I could see about this is that it has got a relatively high oil cost. As I mentioned, for the fleet to work, you will need at least 4 Sakura Empire ships. If you consider the fact that 3 of the 4 ships are already SRs, that already contributes to the oil cost significantly. The only argument I can make against this is time versus oil. There are 2 main costs for farming, one being the resource cost, in this case oil, and the other being the time cost, which is the amount of time you have to personally farm. While this fleet is not exactly oil efficient, this fleet can save you a lot of time due to its aggressive behavior and damage output. This will mean that you will be able to make more progress and get through material faster. However, at the end of the day, it is up to you if you want to use this fleet or not. Bottom line, the fleet is in general a pretty strong fleet and can save you time when it comes to farming at the cost of oil. I personally have enjoyed using this fleet for anti-elite combat, especially if I'm farming on a map with good equipment blueprints. Now it can be used in PvP, but it's not as powerful as it used to be, thanks to Nagato. And a certain war corgi. Because all three of them are medium armors and... Anyway, that will be all for this particular fleet video. Hope you enjoyed it and it will help you in your future endeavors. I've been given some interesting fleet ideas from some of you, and I will see what I can do with them. But if you do have any one that you would like to see on this series that I think may work, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Now, whether you are a regular viewer or a patron supporting the channel on Patreon, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys all again real soon.